Good afternoon, my name's Callum. I'm a sales engineer from Core to Cloud. What I'm going to be doing today is just taking you through an overview of the Vectra product, talking about who Vectra are and having a look at the product itself. So the overview is going to have a format of, I'm initially going to take you through this PowerPoint presentation slide. It's just going to talk a little bit about the product itself, a bit about Vectra, and then we'll get on to the real deal and actually have a look at the product itself with the demo system. Neil, if you've got any questions at all or there's anything you want to go into more detail as we go through, please just shout out as and when. It's a lot easier to talk about it when I've still got the relevant bit on screen, so feel free to interrupt me if there's any burning questions you have at all. I'll start off then talking about the PowerPoint presentation. So Neil, looking at your company, looking at your network, if your network was compromised right now, would you know?
Probably not.
Probably not. Okay, so one of the biggest problems we've got at the moment is what's called the security gap. So although technology has moved leaps and bounds over recent years, we have products called EDR products, which are endpoint detection response, which can form basic things such as antivirus, or you might have dedicated EDR products. But EDR products are generally agent-based. They need to be installed on machines, and they don't usually give you as broader scope as information as you might want. And obviously EDR products only work on the stations they're installed on. So you might not have the product installed on all your machines because, again, it is quite a cumbersome deployment method. Or a good example is your company CEO's left his laptop on the train, or he spilt coffee all over it. He's got a meeting and he's shouting down the phone at you saying he needs a new laptop now or 10 minutes ago. So you get it set up as quick as you can, but you might skip a few steps to get it ready for him. And one of those steps might be EDR. So EDR can only see the products it's installed upon. Obviously, being agent-based as well, EDR can't be installed on all products. So we have what's called the Internet of Things, or IoT devices. I don't know whether you run a high-tech office, you might have smart fridges, you might have smart diffusers or anything like that. Devices that are connected to the internet, but you can't necessarily manage them. And so
we've got a ton of these smart photocopiers.
Smart photocopiers, exactly. So they are running an operating system, they are connected to the internet, but you can't get onto the shell and install an agent-based antivirus. So we have a gap. We can't see those products. Obviously, attackers know there is this gap and they are exploiting it. So it's quite often you have products, especially you can buy anything off Amazon these days which has an internet connection, but it was developed in a rush. They've left port 22 open, and you can easily shell onto the device. And all of a sudden, an attacker has a foot door into your network, which is what we can see here with this this graphic. Is all these devices that we can't see. The EDR is not looking at them, and it's a back door into your network, which is obviously a problem. So the only way we can really see what's going on is to have a look at the network, and the network is the only area that provides the full coverage. Which is where NDR, or network detection response, comes in, and that's what Vectra is here to do. So legacy network security systems are providing a weak link. We've got products such as IDS, which provide zero visibility. They're designed to stop exploits on the wire using signatures. They're not able to detect modern techniques. There's no tracking at all, and there's no history. So it's not really providing us with a huge amount of information that's of any use. And obviously, a lot of stuff is getting by undetected. We've then got NetFlow products. Now, NetFlow was a network performance-based tool, which has been remarketed for security. It shows a connection was made, but not what it was used for. So it's similar to a common problem I'm sure we've all had, where we look at our phone bills. You've got a random charge on there for a phone call you've made. You might not know the number that it was made to or the date and time, only that a call was made and it's cost you X amount. And that's similar to what NetFlow is doing when it's looking at your network. On the other scale, you've got products such as packet capture, or PCAP, which provides far too much information for anyone to make any sense of, which leads to slow search times. It's good.
Callum, can you hold there 1 second? We just lost the Zoom connection at our end. We're just going to dial back in again. Can you hold on 1 moment?
Yeah, of course. I'll hit pause.
Thanks. Right, brilliant. Yeah, okay.
Cool. So going back to packet capture then, it provides a huge amount of information, but that leads to slow search times, especially if you haven't got the skilled resource to trawl through it all. So it's good for forensics, but it's bad for detection and response. If it's taking you weeks to pour through data for stuff that's already happened, you might find you've had a breach, but it might be a week or two too late. So not good for your detection and response. And then you've got security information and event management, or SIEMs we call them. This is usually where you push logs like firewall logs, DNS proxies to a central hub. Now this does offer better fidelity than NetFlow products, but it usually only covers your north and south traffic or your internet traffic. There's usually very little scope for east to west, and that's when traffic's actually traversing around your network. So products aren't covering everything we need to. So it's leading to too many blind spots. Your attackers could remain hidden for months if you're going for PCAP and you're having to trawl through mountains and mountains of irrelevant data, and that costs time and resources. So we need something that offers a high amount of relevance. It's only showing you the information you need to see, but also a huge amount of visibility. So you need to know what's happening in your network to be able to protect it. And this is where Vectra comes into play. So we need something with a high level of fidelity, but giving that 360-degree view, so you're north to west, north to south, east to west, and also enhancing technology such as AI detections. AI has come a huge way. Oh, sorry, was there a question there?
No, we're good.
Keep going, sorry. Just stay there, so keep going.
No worries. So AI detection, so rather than relying on humans to trawl through the data, actually using the power of AI to do some of the hard work for us. So high relevance and high visibility, and that's what Vectra is here to do. So Vectra Cognito was designed from the ground up to solve this problem. It's got knowledge of what's happening in every conversation, and it's enriched with content-specific data. It scales efficiently to even the largest networks, so we've got sensors that are physical, virtual, and cloud, again, to provide that 360-degree visibility, because we can only see the traffic that's pointed towards us. So we need to be able to deploy our sensors in the right places to be able to track that traffic. So the Cognito platform is made up of 3 products. We've got Cognito Detect. That's what we're going to have a look at in detail today. This is the AI model that's trawling through the data in order to find those attackers, and it's using AI to detect things outside of the norm. We've also got Cognito Recall. Now this is Vectra's software as a service-based application in the cloud, and it's a data tool set for investigation and hunting. So it trawls through or gives you access to the metadata in the back end to be able to offer up further, deeper investigation. But we also got Cognito Stream. Now, Cognito Stream is it's a piping tool essentially. So if you've already got data lakes or SIEMs in place, rather than having to replace all those systems that you've already spent time and money into, you can actually use Cognito Stream to pipe the metadata into your existing systems so it can be used alongside. Out of interest, do you have any data lakes or SIEMs at the moment, Neil?
Yeah, we've got a very basic SIEM. So in terms of, we click a few logs off Windows machines, try and keep an eye on things, but it is quite a good ticketing handling system. That's how we kind of use it at the moment. Okay, well, you might find then Stream is something you might want to look into if you want to pipe all this metadata into. But if it, as you said, it's quite a basic SIEM at the moment, you might want to have a look at the Recall, which we will have a look at in detail when we go into the demo. But just to have a look at these in a bit more detail then. So as I mentioned, Stream is the ability to pipe data into existing lakes and SIEMs if you wanted to. It puts the data into a Bro or Zeek format and allows you to build on your existing tooling models, because everyone knows in the IT industry, you know, invest a huge amount of time and money into a product in 1 year, and by the next year it's already out of date. Vectra isn't designed to replace everything you've got already. It's designed to enhance what you've got. So it's good to scale up existing developments should you wish to use them. So Cognito Recall, again, this is the SaaS-based application in the cloud, and this is, you know, really comes into its own when you don't want to manage the big data yourself. If you don't have the time or resources to be able to store all this data, you want it in the cloud, but you want to have access into it to offer that level of fidelity for investigation, then Recall is a good one to look at. And it's not a case of this or that. You can use Stream and Recall together. So for example, you could use Recall for data from 1 to 2 weeks, and then use like a Splunk data lake or SIEM for long-term data storage if you wanted to, or you could use one or the other. So it's very flexible in that regard. Hey Callum, could I ask, with the Cognito Recall, can I have that data lake on site, or have I got to use Vectra's cloud? I don't want anything going off site really. I'd like it all in my own premises.
Absolutely. Well, recall, you could pipe the information into your existing data lake and then use the recall application. You can plumb it into your existing data lake. So if your data's on site, and then you can use the tools available in recall. So yeah, you don't have to use the cloud-based storage. You could have the data on site and then pipe recall into that.
That's great. All right, thanks for checking.
No problem. And again, the one we're going to have a look at again today in the demo is Cognito Detect. So the whole idea around this is to not let manpower be your bottleneck. We all know talent costs a lot, and even the most talented threat hunter can't spot a threat. If he's going through packet capture information, he could be there for weeks or months before he actually notices something out of the ordinary. So enhancing the power of AI to show us the information we need and quickly, so we're not missing threats or detections. Now, the Vectra is based off what's called the Lockheed Martin kill chain. This was patented by Lockheed Martin back in 2011 using a military model framework. Conveniently, Lockheed Martin developed this and patented it shortly after they had a big data breach, suspectedly by the Chinese, and coincidentally the Chinese then started bringing out some similar looking aircraft following this breach. But it just shows the behavior and the kind of path attackers usually follow, and it all starts off with command and control. So this is where an external attacker will gain either external remote access or hidden tunnels, either DNS or HTTP, to a machine or a device inside your network. Once they're in, they're then going to do some reconnaissance. They can either do an internal port sweep or port scan, look for some SMB accounts, and it's going to look for a way to traverse around your network because they need to have that total coverage. They need to find their way around, and that's not going to happen in a matter of hours. The reconnaissance phase can take months for an attacker to form that full picture before they actually start doing something within your network. There's then lateral movement. So they've done the reconnaissance, they find some paths they can move around, they then want to spread to as much as your network as possible. So you might find some suspicious remote execution or some suspicious RDP. You might find some admin accounts being used that haven't been used in a long time, or on machines that they're not usually used on. And that usually is then going to lead to either exfiltration, where they're going to grab a load of data and quickly tunnel that out into their network. It could be personal information, credit card details, or if you've got some confidential technology or something they want to get hold of, they're going to exfiltrate that out your network. Or they might use the machines for botnet monetization. So they could use it for cryptocurrency mining, or they might use it for external brute force attacks or DDoS attacks, but to try and gain some money, not necessarily from yourselves, but another victim. And this is the flow an attacker will take to get into your network. And this is what we'll see when we go into the demo that Vectra is looking for, and it's looking through steps throughout this kill chain.
Smashing. Thanks, Callum. Yeah, that's straightforward.
Perfect. So what we'll do then, I will go into the demo. We can have a look around, and rather than me talking about it, you can see how it actually works, and then we'll just come back to this presentation to wrap up. So this is the dashboard. This is our demo system, so it's not a live network. And what's obviously important to note is this is designed to sing and dance. So we want to show you all the detections. So you might find it screaming at you a bit more than you'd find in your own network, but that's just so we can show you what Vectra is looking for. At the moment, you can see this, a lot of these boxes are showing no information. That's just because of how the demo system's refreshing itself. So I can change this dashboard here to show the last 30 days, and all of a sudden all this information starts being filled out. So the dashboard, this is the first screen that you're going to be taken to when you go into your Vectra box. And it's just a way of quickly showing all the information about what's going on. We'll go into all these different areas in more detail, but I'll just quickly take you around the dashboard. So to start off with, we can see we're currently analyzing over 3,000 IPs. The only thing that's really useful for is to actually show that we are seeing traffic. Obviously, if that was only showing 1 or 2 IPs, and I know I've got a network of thousands of IPs, then the box probably isn't looking at all the traffic it needs to. And what's important to remember is we can only analyze what we can see. If the traffic's not being passed through the Vectra device, it's not going to be able to see it, and we're not going to be able to detect things. So we'll talk about the deployment shortly after, but that's just useful to see we are actually seeing traffic. Then we can see our host severity summary at the top here, which is showing us how many hosts in each section. So we've obviously got some low threats, medium threats, high threats, and critical threats. Obviously, because this is the demo system at the moment, which has refreshed itself, I'm showing 12 hosts, and that's an increase in 12 since this was recording data, which obviously isn't the case in the real world, but it's quite handy to see if you've got hundreds of hosts and you've got an increasing number of critical hosts. That's usually a good sign that something's moving around your network and you're probably going to have a bad day. We then have a look at some of the hosts themselves. So we've got these key assets. Now, key assets are things that we've set ourselves. So it's machines that we've marked as being more important than others. So it's usually either critical servers or CEO laptops or desktops or things like that, things we probably need to keep quite a close eye on. And what kind of detections we're seeing across these key assets. We can see we've got Leroy Brown at the top here, which we'll have a look at in more detail, but more or less going through the whole kill chain process. We've got some command and control, recon, lateral, exfil, and botnet. So it's just a handy graph so we can see some detections going on. And again, that we're probably going to have a bad day. Further down, we've got worst offenders. So these are machines that are flagging up the most. We'll have a look at this threat uncertainty graph in the host page in a second, which will make more sense. But again, it's just piping up information to us that we need to see. These are our machines that are our worst offenders. We've got some attack campaigns that we're taking part in. And again, we'll have a look at the campaigns in more detail, but this just shows us that there are some campaigns going on in the background that we need to have a look at. And we can quickly see how many internal hosts are taking part in these campaigns. A quick breakdown of the detections we're seeing. So we've got how many threats have been detected, how many we've fixed, how many just for information and such, and the kind of detections we're seeing. So we've got again some botnets and command and control and the different detections that are actually happening. So our hidden HTTPS tunnels and some suspicious remote execution. But this has all been designed so basically you can go straight into the Vectra device and you can already get a good idea about what's happening in your network. So what we'll have a look at is probably the most useful screen to start off with is the host screen. I'll just wait for that to load. There we are. So here we have quite a handy graph of what's happening in our network. So on the left-hand side, we've got our threat level going from 0 to 99, and then along the bottom, we've got our certainty level, again, going from 0 to 99. So obviously stuff down here at the bottom, low threats, low level of certainty, probably nothing going on that we need to look at. But on the other end of the spectrum, we've got devices up here, 99 threat level and 99 level of certainty, which is just the classification that Vectra's given, not only the threat itself, but what's actually happening to that threat. So we see these icons here are individual machine icons. Anything indicated by a plus shows we've got multiple machines here. So we can have a look and expand, and we've got bad Leroy Brown there, and we've also got Cindy both showing 99 threat level and 99 certainty. Along the bottom here, it's just another way of displaying this information. So we've got the machines themselves, the level of threat and the level of certainty, but probably this graph is what you're going to find people using the most. So if we go and have a look at one of the hosts themselves, we can see what information Vectra is actually telling us. So again, having a look at bad Leroy Brown. And this is the screen that you'll be shown for the host itself. So again, focusing on that Lockheed Martin kill chain, we can see the attack phases this machine's gone through. So it's gone through the works basically. We've had some command and control, it's done some recon, it's gone through some lateral movement, and not only has it exfilled some data, but it's also doing some botnet tasks here. We can also see it's participating in a campaign, which I will show you in more detail shortly. But again, we now know this machine isn't just working on its own. There's a group of machines doing the same thing. And then we have what's actually gone on the machine here. So if I expand all these, we can get a pretty good picture already about what's happened on this machine. So there's been a smash and grab on this IP. It's sent some data out to this 1.1.1.1 IP address.
What's a smash and grab, Callum?
Smash and grab, that's when someone's gone into your network and they've exfilled a load of data. So it could be a large quantity of data, or it could just be a couple of accounts, but they've broken into your network and they've grabbed a load of data and sent it back out of your network onto their systems.
All right, okay.
We've also got some suspicious admin going on, which we'll look in more detail in a second. But again, I can already see the machine that it's the suspicious admin is happening on, and it's using the RDP protocol. The machine's then done some recon. It's scanned all of these targets here on port 389. So total of 20 IPs contacted. It's then done a port sweep. It's scanned 489 different hosts, of which 61 was successful using this UDP port 389. There's been some external remote access from this bad actor.net target on 1.1.1.1. And I can see already there's been some data transfer between the two. It's not a huge amount of data at the moment, so I'm maybe not suspecting that they've stolen all my company data, but this external remote access is taking some data out of my network, which is going to be a problem. You can also see that some malware has been uploaded from this mail. I can't pronounce that, but it's a random domain, but it is .ru. So I already know that's more than likely going to be trouble, because .ru domains usually are. And it's downloaded 3 items. And again, I can quickly see the files that have been downloaded here. And then there's been some abnormal ware activity, obviously. 88,000 HTTP sessions. That's not general user behavior. That's something connecting to a lot of different machines. So it might be a DDoS attack or something like that. So we'll have a look at this suspicious admin. And because this is quite useful to see how the AI detection comes into play. So we can see here we've got our machine, Leroy Brown. He's trying to RDP onto this host here. Now, Vectra's AI has detected this as unusual behavior because Leroy Brown has never tried to administer this machine on RDP before. What we do know is it's usually administered by this Robert MacBook Pro, which usually connects to it. But we've never seen Leroy Brown try to get to this server, which is why Vectra has flagged this up and gone, that's suspicious. I've never seen this happen before. Obviously, if this was just the only detection, we might think that's actually not a high level of threat. Maybe our network administrators just had to hop on this machine to do some admin because he's left his at home. But obviously, knowing that this Leroy Brown machine has gone through the entire attack cycle, this is increasing our threat level. And again, we can have a look at the malware update here to have a look at some more information. So again, we've got the nice infographic to show that this file has been downloaded from a command and control, and we can see that from our attack phase where it's showing this is part of the command and control attack phase from this command and control server here. And these are all the files we've downloaded. So it could be quite good for cleanup. We already know the files we're looking for or the associated processes we need to look for just from having a look at this screen here. And again, we do have a timeline. We've only got the one detection here, so we can see when it was detected. Obviously, if there was an attack that was downloading lots of different files over a long period of time, our timeline would be lit up here with all the different detections. So what we'll do then, we'll have a look at another host which is showing a different attack pattern, and I'll also show you what the recall platform looks like here as well. So I can go back to my host screen. I already know the host I'm looking for here, but I can either go through and click on them and find them, or I can do the handy search function because I already know what machine I want to look for. And it's this Jackson P1 here. Now, as I can immediately see, this one's not gone through the same kill chain as Leroy Brown has. We've obviously got some command and control. There's some recon going on, and they've moved laterally, but so far they haven't taken anything, and they're not using this machine for any monetization. But what I can immediately see is it's another machine participating in a campaign. So we'll just have a quick look at that, and you can have a look at the campaigns view. So going straight into the attack campaigns view from the main window, we can see all the campaigns that are currently partaking in this network. Again, you're probably unlikely to see loads of campaigns, but this is our demo systems, which is again has been designed to show you all these flags. So looking at R1 in more detail, I know from our screen here that this host is partaking in a campaign which is being controlled by an Amazon AWS server. So I can come into the campaigns view and have a look at this in more detail, and I can immediately get a picture about what's going on. So we've got this handy infographic at the top here, which is showing all the different processes and how this campaign is being mounted. So instantly I can see all the machines that are taking part. And what this is useful for is if you've got, viruses or intrusions that have been designed to move around your network as quickly as possible. Going back not so far to the likes of the WannaCry virus, which was specifically scripted to get in and cause as much damage as possible. So it was designed to replicate and move around in any way possible. Now this campaigns view is really handy for being able to see what's actually affected. So rather than doing a whack-a-mole approach, and as and when you see detections on machines, going to that machine and having a look. By that time, the intrusion is probably moved to another machine. So I can immediately see from this campaign view here what machines have been affected and what machines I need to go have a look at quickly before it replicates any further. And this will keep being updated. So if we're not quick enough and this intrusion is moving around, that our attacker is getting around the network, I'll be able to see from the view here, and I can see what address this is coming from, and I can already get a pretty good picture about what's actually happened here from this infographic. So looking by the way the arrows are pointing, you can see that it's likely started with Jackson P here, which is the machine that's we've been looking at, which has got a hidden HTTP tunnel to this bad host here. It's then moved to my Shan file server, which is again then moved around to 2 other machines using suspicious remote execution, and another machine has then come back with a hidden tunnel. We can further confirm this. We do actually have a trail of events. You can see I've got this view events button in the top left-hand corner, which I can click on, and this shows me all the events that Vectra has detected while partaking in this campaign. So I can simply sort it by the timestamp, and I can see this has all started from a suspicious connection to my Jackson P machine from this server, which is being hosted in Amazon AWS, and it's then using suspicious remote execution moved over to my file server, and it's replicated from there. So I already know who my patient 0 is. It's our Jackson P, and I already know what machines are being affected by this, so I can quickly get my IT team to take those machines off the network before this spreads any further. And if it does spread, I'll be able to see it from this handy view here. So campaigns is a really useful tool when you've got such attacks moving around your network. If I go back to my host, Jackson P, which I already now know is my patient 0 from having a look at that campaigns view, I can see what's actually gone on. So again, there's been some command and control, it's done some recon and it's moved laterally, but currently we're not seeing any exfil or botnet. So I can see the tunnel and where it's come from. So again, this Amazon AWS server. I can see the IP address associated in the port. So if this was an active connection, I'd instantly know what rule I need to create on my firewall to block this connection off. And I can see there's been some suspicious remote execution on my file server, and also that it's been doing some port scanning. It's scanned 331 ports on my Watsonville target. So it's another machine. So if I have a look at the suspicious remote execution, I can already see that it's used RPC to try and get across the network, which is a very common technique used by attackers. But even more worrying, I can see that this RPC connection is trying to use Service Control Manager on my file server. And looking at the bottom, I can see the executed functions. It's tried to create a service on my file server. So I can see it's obviously tried to create something and it potentially has run something on there. And I've got a process running on my file server that I don't want. And this is where recall can come into play. So I can already get a pretty good idea about what's happened just from using detect, but I now want to go and have a look more at the metadata to see exactly what's going on. Now, if you're using stream to pipe this into your existing SIEM, then you can have a look at this there, but I'll show you what recall looks like and how we can use it. So I've already got a handy link here from this machine to investigate in recall, which I'll click onto. And there we are. I'm straight onto the dashboard now in recall. And what it's done, because I've clicked on the link from this host, from Jackson P, around the time of this detection, the dashboard that's showing me at the moment is specific to Jackson P around the time of the detection. So it's already given me a good picture about the information. So I can see the domains here that this machine is connected to. And I already know this 34.209.123.148 is part of this campaign started from this Amazon AWS server, and I can go back and double check that either from the host view. I can have a look at the campaign and I can see the IP address there of where it's coming from. So we can already put 2 and 2 together, and I can now see that this machine's connected on port 8081 to this command and control server. I can see the internal connections that this machine has made from Jackson P. So again, I can see it's gone to Watsonville and to Calvin K. I can see all the internal admin connections. So again, most of them have not got any data sent to and from them, but there's been an internal admin connection from my Jackson P machine on Watsonville and Calvin K. I can see all the Kerberos account usage that's happened on this machine. Again, I can already see how.local, that's not my domain, that sounds quite fishy, so definitely got some problems going on here. Scrolling further down, we've got the NTLM account usage. Again, we've already seen from detect that there's been some RPC happening on our machine, and again, it's using the service control manager. So that's just where detect has got that information from. This is actually looking at the metadata now. All the DNS requests, again, we've got DNS request to how.local. I know that's not my domain, so this is obviously the machine querying my attacker's DNS server. The destinations, and again, I can see there's an encoded destination here, which isn't standard web browsing or traffic, so definitely something going on in the background. And more worryingly, the use of PowerShell, which you can see here at the bottom. Now, I know my user's not used to using PowerShell. He's not an admin at all, shouldn't be using PowerShell. So the fact he's using PowerShell on his machine is a concern to me. So what I can do, I've got a handy feature here to filter for this value. So just from this screen, I can click the plus. That then starts to filter all this information based on that usage of PowerShell. So I can see we've got this encoded HTTP destination, which has come from PowerShell, but all the other information is being filtered away because it's unrelated. Because I've filtered it, it now appears at the top here. And what's is a handy thing you can do is you can actually pin that use of PowerShell. So now if I go across to the Discover screen, which is going to show me the raw metadata, I'm now filtering this information based on PowerShell. So by default, it's taking me to the iSession page, which has obviously got no information. But if I was to go on to the HTTP session metadata, it will start showing me some results. So again, we're filtering on the use of PowerShell, and I can see I've got this binary encoded URI, which isn't standard behavior at all. So I can already see there's something going on in the background here that I need to have a look at. And I've got all these available fields here. Now, Recall's been very kind to me and it's making my job easy. It already knows, looking at this HTTP information, this is probably the fields I'm going to want to look at. So it's put these at the top as the popular fields, but I have got all the other fields available to me at the bottom should I wish to look at them. And I can click on one of these and it can show me all the relevant data relating to that field. So again, looking at the host name, because we've come from Jackson P, this is the only machine we're looking at the moment. But if there were lots of other hosts, the top 5 values would be displayed here. So what we'll do then is we'll have a look at, I already know from detect that there's been some RPC traffic between this and my file server. So I'm going to want to have a look at that in a bit more detail. So I'll clear all these filters I've got at the moment and go for a new search. I'll get rid of that PowerShell there. And I'm going to have a look at the RPC metadata. So I can change the field here to look at RPC. And I can already tell from this detection that we've looked at here that service control manager is being used on my Sharn file server. So I'm going to want to look at that in a bit more detail. So if I now go back across to Recall, I'm going to create my own custom filter for the endpoint of Service Control Manager. So I can apply that filter here, and now the metadata is being filtered accordingly to show me everything relevant to that use of Service Control Manager. Although I could probably trawl through all this information here and find out what I need to, I like to work smart and not hard. So I'm going to use the display features of Vectra to be able to whittle down this information. So I'm going to create my own table. So I've got this add feature here for all of our available fields. So I'm going to add the host name, the origin host name and the response host name. I also want to have a look at what operations have been run here. And I can already see what we already knew. Again, if I filter by the timestamp, looking at Jackson and our Sharn file server, that it's run start a service, create a service, it's then queried the service status, it's have a look at the service manager again, and then it's closed off and deleted the service. So it's created a service on my file server that's run something, and then the attacker's tried to clean up their trace and he's deleted that service. So I already now have a good idea about what's happened on this file server, and I can then go and have a look in more detail about what service has been run and go digging in more detail. And that's taking me all of 10-15 minutes, whereas if I was just looking through packet capture information and I had a huge amount of data to trawl through, that might take me a couple of hours, if not days. And this is where the power of Vectra really comes into its own, about being able to get the information you need to see and quickly. again, that's recall. I won't go into any more detail on that at the moment unless you want me to. We'll just have another quick look at detect and just go through all the available options. So we can see at the moment, looking at this particular detection, because Vectra is doing a packet capture in the background, I can actually download a packet capture of this specific threat if I wanted to have a look at that in more detail. I can add a note on it here. If I'm the first responder, I can quickly chuck some notes in to say what I've done or what I've looked at. If I was then going to escalate this so it's all in one place, I could actually assign this to another user. Again, this is our demo system, so we don't have a huge amount of accounts here. But if I was a first line SOC engineer and I then wanted to escalate this, I could assign this to one of my teammates for further analysis. And this would then, if they've been set up correctly, will send them an email to say this particular detection has been assigned to them for further analysis. I could also create a share link to this particular detection. Obviously, it will only work for users that have been set up to use the Vectra system. If I'm sending this to a random third party who's never used the box before, they'll just, if at all, they'll just get to the login page and they won't be able to look any further. So again, it's only useful for sharing things internally if you want to quickly point someone in the right direction. But that's the shared feature there. We've also got ways to download virtual centers. If I've got a vCenter deployment, I want to download a virtual sensor. Oh, sorry, I've just clicked away from that one. There we are. I can actually download the sensors to deploy straight from here. I can also have a look at the physical host that the device is seeing with those virtual sensors. Again, this is our demo system, but this is the host that it's picking up. I can actually create triage filters. Now, I can't do this in our demo environment. That's unfortunately a limitation, so I can't really go into that in more detail at the moment. But if you wanted to take this further and wanted to look to do get a bit of kit on site for you to trial on your network, we could then go through and create triage filters so we can show the process of actually clearing up detections, but that feature does exist. I've also got the ability to run reports. So again, I won't actually create the report because this is just our demo system, but if I wanted to filter by particular levels of threats or certainties or do particular hosts, I could create all these relevant fields and then run a report which will show me all the information relevant depending on what I've set here.
You got any sample reports you can maybe send me after the meeting?
Absolutely, yeah. If you want a sample report, we can certainly get that organised and get one sent over to you, so you can actually see what information that's showing. I can have a look.
Yeah, that's great. That's what.
Perfect. I can also have a look. So these are all the sensors I've got deployed here. So Vectra X is the brain, which is where all the data is reporting into, and that's actually the box we're using here on this user interface. But these are all the sensors I've got deployed, which are all virtual sensors in our environment. Obviously, at the moment, because the demo isn't actually running any traffic, I've got no traffic monitoring here. But if this was deployed into a live environment, you'd expect to see some traffic. So it's just a handy interface just to see if you're actually getting data back from your sensors. And that really is the product in a nutshell. Obviously, this is relevant to our our demo system. So everything is set to flag up as much information as possible. I'm sure it'll probably make more sense to you when you can see it in your own environment and see what, if any, detections it's picking up relevant to your setup in your host. But is there anything you wanted me to have a look at again in more detail at all, or do you feel that's covered everything off for you for the moment?
James?
No, that's fine. Thank you. I mean, just out of interest, how would a proof of concept work with the solution?
Absolutely. So I'll just finish off with the PowerPoint presentations because we've just got a few more slides to go through. So I'll just chuck this back up. So just to answer your question, I'll just skip a few slides ahead and then we can come back. But this is generally the process we go through. So obviously we've gone through the overview at the moment so you can see the product and what it is and what it does. What we'll then look to do, if it's something you wanted to proceed with, is we'll develop or define a success criteria about what exactly is we're going to be looking for and what we want to see. Whether you're comparing it against products you're using at the moment, or whether you just want to see everything that the product can do. And then we then create an installation checklist. We then get a device sent out to you. will get you to install it. It will need to go into one of your core switches, again, because we need to see as much of the traffic as possible in order to get the detections. But during the preparation phase, we will actually scale what particular device you need and how many sensors, because again, it might not just be the one device you need. You might need to install a couple of sensors in any remote networks you have. So once that's all been done, we'll get that installed, and then we'll actively work with you. So usually we'll go through weekly workshops to review what the device is seeing. So obviously, being AI based, as the system gets used to your network and used to your behaviors, you'll start to see more and more detections, especially user based detections on behavior that it's not used to seeing. So obviously after the first week, we'll schedule a meeting with you, sit down, and we'll go through what Vectra has actually seen to start off with. We can then go through some basic triaging, and then we'd look to do that for up to 4 weekly reviews, and then we can give you a final executive report and readout to show you over the 4-week period what the device has actually seen and what we've gone through, and that's usually all done within 30 days. So does that answer your question, or do you have any more at all?
No, that's brilliant, thank you.
Perfect. So I'll just quickly go back just to go through the final wrap up. So what's important to remember is Vectra is not just designed to be Vectra and Vectra only. Obviously, Vectra are more than aware that you've already probably spent some time and money on your existing infrastructure, and if you've got something that's good as it is already, Vectra is designed to enhance that. So there's already some pre-built integrations with leading endpoint detection and response products such as CrowdStrike or Carbon Black. It also integrates with the top themes such as Splunk, QRadar, Logarithm, ArcSight, all that good stuff. And it also, they do provide a rich API. So if you had the means available, you could enable your own integrations as you wanted. So it's not just designed to replace everything you've got already, it's designed to enhance it if necessary. We've touched on it.
That's fantastic.
We've touched on it briefly, but again, looking at the deployment of Vectra, so the box needs to be able to see all the traffic. It's usually deployed using tap or spam ports on one of your core switches, and we can deploy additional sensors as necessary depending on how many networks we need to cover. There's both virtual and physical sensors, so it's not just looking at your physical network. If you've got cloud infrastructure as well, we can have a look at that. So it can scale to the largest of enterprises. Again, Vectra, they've been around for a while. They have been making some noise, but they've been making noise in the right areas and they've been recognised for it. So that's just some of their awards at the moment. Obviously, they were the only visionary in Gartner's 2018 Magic Quadrant for IDPS. It's probably the last time they're going to be there because, as we talked about, IDP is becoming a bit redundant in technology, but also some of the 3-star US government organizations such as the US Department of Defense, they're getting approved for, and all that good stuff there. The most common replacements of Vectra, as I said, it is designed to enhance what you've got already, but you might find you actually need to replace some of your legacy systems. So IDS is probably the most common product that we see Vectra replace, just because of how much noise it creates, and it typically doesn't find the right information for you. But we also see it replace NetFlow products as well, because the recall and stream products do provide better visibility. It's much cleaner and it's much more effective for detection. Again, we've talked about the what would happen next if you wanted to progress any further. So that's all from my side of things, unless you had any further questions at all.